should I talk here?
So, no, it's not, so the live stream is not showing.
It's not.
So can we, let's move this.
Okay.
I took the long way around.
So,
I didn't want to have to get.
over here?
No, let's move the screen. See that the screen is all
Okay.
the way to the side.
Right. So, what
This
should we
is
do?
now live, right?
Yes.
Why doesn't it show us? It's just.
It's heating all the zones except for the sanctuary.
See ourselves here.
Hmm.
But anyway, let's move it to the center.
The screen?
The screen, yeah, but otherwise.
Okay. Would you mind doing that? Hi. I'm going to introduce you.
Okay,
I'll just speak for like 5 minutes and then I'll introduce you.
perfect. And would we get somebody to help me with the slides?
Masood, can you help Shoshana with this?
I'd like to do it, yes. Is that okay?
They were here in person, not just a car.
Do you need help?
Who's setting this up? It's not running yet.
Bill Rubin. It was supposed to start at 9:45.
No, because it's better to see the screen.
Maybe something.
Should we speak at this podium or
Can speak
Yeah.
there, yeah.
it's still not showing up?
Yeah, there's price. They wanted it out. They can be waiting for it. It could be very large, very large. Barbara asked if they have a rabbi.
Okay,
It's working?
it's like this now. I think it's pretty well.
So it's good if I'm here?
If you're here, well, see this blocked by this, so she has to be here, right?
Speak here?
But where's the microphone?
Here?
Is this one?
Yeah, is it?
Is this one?
No?
Is this one?
I think so.
That's the one, right?
Can we just move that over so will
So
it pick me
we,
up?
we can move the screen a little bit
Okay,
this
that
way,
way,
then.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Give us one more minute, technical difficulties. Good? Oh, hold it. We good, Masood? You think we're good now? I think so, yeah. Okay. I'm just going to introduce, I'm just going to make a few announcements, then I'll introduce you. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Good. What? Is the mic? Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay. Welcome, everybody. It's so wonderful to see everybody here today and joining us. I just have a few announcements and then we'll proceed with the program. As I said in the lounge, our tzedakah today will go to Magen David Dome. Also, you'll notice when you came in, there was a lot of food. That's part of our food drive for the hungry in Peekskill. So please, in the future, whenever you come, that's an ongoing food drive. So please be generous with your donations. Putting on my hat as the chair of the Social Action Committee, I just want to remind everybody that we donate to a program that provides luncheon also for the hungry at Peekskill. And if you want to help with that, you can send in a check made out to First Hebrew Congregation that says Soup Kitchen in the memo line. I'm going to have Mindy very briefly tell you about Torah Fund.
Welcome, everybody. I am the Torah Fund Chair for our congregation. If you don't know what Torah Fund is, it doesn't provide Torahs. It provides education. It provides education at the 5 conservative Masorti seminaries around the world. Our closest one, JTS, here in New York City, which is where Rabbi Dana got her organization. Hi, Rabbi. So we when you make a donation to Torah Fund, it helps provide education for rabbis, for cantors, for Jewish lay leaders and professionals. The Torah Fund theme, there's a theme every year. This year I'm not going to say it in Hebrew because I don't have it in front of me, but what it translates to is all of Israel is responsible for one another. They picked this theme far in advance of the events of the past week. But how appropriate is that theme? If you make a $180 donation to Torah Fund, you get a beautiful pin as a gift. I'm wearing it. Our Metro North Region president from Women's League, Lisa Green, is here today, and she's also wearing the pin. But it's a grassroots campaign. Any and all donations are always accepted. We have cards you can send for any occasion. There are e-cards on the Torah Fund website. So if you have questions, just speak to me. Barbara, I know, has a pin. She wears it on Shabbat. No, but she wore it yesterday. Barbara had hers on yesterday. Fran has one. But any and all donations are gladly accepted. And if you have questions, just speak to me. I'll be glad to tell you all about it and how you can help students, help scholarship to help our students achieve their dreams and their goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Excuse me. I hope everybody will join us for our next meeting on November 12th, when Ron Ahrens will speak to us about the Jews of Sing Sing, where he'll speak about the lives of a dozen Jewish gangsters who served time in Sing Sing prison. When you were in the lounge for breakfast, there were flyers for that program on the table. And then another program at First Hebrew will be on October 22nd, next Sunday, which is Bagels and Books, and be breakfast and a presentation of book reviews and recommendations. So I hope we'll see you there as well. And now it's my honor and privilege to introduce our speaker for today, Shoshana Nambi. Shoshana is a rabbinical student at Hebrew Union College and a student rabbi at Rodef Shalom, a Reform congregation on the Upper West Side, of New York City. She grew up in the Abadaya community in eastern Uganda, and the history of the Abadaya community is not familiar to many of us, and Shoshana will tell us about it and discuss her Jewish journey. And then afterwards, Shoshana is also an author. She authored a children's book called The Very Best Sukkah, a story from Uganda. The book received a 2023 National Jewish Book Award and was named a Sidney Taylor Honor Book. Books will be available in the lounge after our program, and Shoshana has kindly agreed to sign them for us. So it's now my honor to present Shoshana.
Thank you so much, Fran. It's such an honor to be here with you this morning. I almost wrote an email to Fran to ask and say, is this the right time to do this program? And I'm glad I did now, because I feel like this is the right time to do programming and to be together and to learn. So I'm going to start by singing a song, Hine Matov, in a Ugandan tune. Some of the Hebrew words we know, and I will sing it Hebrew and Luganda. You are not obligated to sing the Luganda words, but join me in the Hebrew parts. Hine Matov Umanaim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad Hine Matov Umanaim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad Lava Bekulio Kulunji Bekusanyusa Uganda okutula lava bekulyo kulungi bekusanyusa Uganda okutula inemato umanai shevetachim gam yachad. So I feel like when you come to my Jewish community in Uganda, a lot of things will sound very familiar, like, Hine Matov, and all the prayers are in Hebrew. Some things that might sound a little bit different, we have a lot of melodies that have been composed in Ugandan rhythm and tune, and with drums and singing and dancing, but almost everything is the same. And I love that about, Judaism, is that whenever you go anywhere, you can feel at home. You can feel like you're part of a Jewish community. Our Shabbat meal, we do not have bagels and logs, but a typical Shabbat meal will be rice and beans and posho, which is made from corn flour and plantain and lots of vegetables. A lot of people grow their own food, and we don't eat so much meat because it's expensive, but we have people in the community who have been trained to do ritual slaughter of animals. We have two rabbis at this point. We have a Rabbi Gershom Sizomu, who was ordained in 2008 from Ziegler, from the conservative movement. My community most of the community is conservative. We have 3 Orthodox communities as well. In those communities, we have a rabbi. His name is Rabbi Moshe Yashira, and he was ordained in Israel by Rabbi Rinskin. So it is a growing community. How do we have a Jewish community in Uganda in the first place? So I love to start with this map of Uganda, and as you can see, the small dot that's in Mbale, which is the eastern part of Uganda, and it's about 6 hours away from the airport, which is Entebbe in central Uganda. And so when I fly home, I fly to Entebbe airport. Maybe some of you have heard about it through the raid on Entebbe, and so I take a public transportation or a car back to Mbale, where most of the Jewish community is. We have about 2,000 Jews in Uganda, and we've been saying that for a long time. I really saw some newborn babies, and I'm sure we have a little bit more people. And we have more than 10 synagogues in Uganda, separated in different geographical locations. We used to have about 4, and all people would come to one of the synagogues because we had like one rabbi, one person who would lead all the services. And now people are, we have a lot of young people who can lead services, and because of the geographical location, we have more synagogues than before. And so the Jewish community started in 1919 in Uganda, and it began by this one man. His name was Semeika Kungulu. He worked for the British. He married a princess who was from one of the royal kingdoms in Uganda, Buganda, which is the largest. And he was a military soldier, and he was a landman. He would read and, study a lot of things, and he was a spiritual seeker. He went from one spiritual practice to another. And because he worked with the British, he was gifted the Bible as any other, gifts that were given, Christian gifts that were given. So he read the Bible and he decided that he liked a lot of things that were in the Old Testament, as he called it. But at the moment, he practiced a different kind of religion. He moved away and he became part of a religion called the Amalekite, because they would pray on Shabbat, on Saturday, but they would also have some Christian elements with them. And so at that point, he wanted circumcision for his children, and he was wondering why they don't do Brit Milah. And so they told him, we don't do that. That's what Jewish people do. And he was very interested in this idea. And he also met somebody else because he was influential, and he met people traveling from different places, and this was, there was trade in Uganda. So he met somebody who was from the Middle East. The community thinks he was from Israel, present-day Israel, and some people think he was from Yemen. His name is Joseph. That was Jewish enough for us. So he met him, and he told him what about Judaism, and he was very interested. So he started learning with him a little bit, and so Joseph came back several times and brought him like ritual objects like slaughter knives and kiddush cups and all these things that he introduced to him. And so Kusemeka Kungulu was very fascinated with this idea. And so because he worked with the British, they rewarded him with a big chunk of land in eastern Uganda. And so his legacy, he has so many legacies. One of the legacies is he planted these trees, which are like 100 years old now. They are called the Semeka Kungulu trees all over the city of Mbale, on highways and everywhere. And one of the things that he did is he donated a chunk of this land to the Jewish community. In the beginning, he built a temple in his own home, and he would pray with people. But this was a time when he had not studied so much about Judaism, so a lot of practices and things that he did were his commentary. And he had friends, people who joined him, and among those people were my great-grandfather and a lot of our great-grandfathers and grandfathers who worked with him. And so, unfortunately, Semeka Kungulu died in 1928. But before he died, it's said that he had a congregation. People would meet and pray on Shabbat and read Psalms and read from the Torah. And they had composed a book that was called Jews Who Fear God. I think that was the book, the title of the book. And when he died, the community really dismantled a little bit, because he was the head, he was the land person, he was holding everybody, he had all the finances. But some of the people who were with him went to different villages in Uganda and started their own villages and started Jewish communities. And that's how we have so many different Jewish communities in different places. I like to joke that even in Uganda, we have a community that we have a synagogue we don't go to. But which is very hard, because we in Uganda we almost know each other, we grew up with each other, and it's also a different culture, because when you celebrate like a wedding or something, everybody comes, everybody in the village, whether they're Jewish or not. If you know somebody, you have to go. It doesn't, even if you don't like them or don't go to their synagogue, you have to go. So that is something that also keeps us together. We have about 5 Jewish schools now. We have 1 high school and 4 primary schools, and these are mostly because they are in different locations, and some of them are boarding schools, so that some kids who are farther away from the schools can come and board at the school. And so when Semeka Kungulu died, the community struggled a little bit, but people, adapted and started practicing and learning on their own. And this is when Israel, the present-day Israel, was established in 1948, and there was an embassy in Nairobi, an Israeli embassy in Nairobi. So the community was in touch with the Israeli embassy in Nairobi, and we had people come to the community from the embassy to teach and to live in the community and to visit. So thereby expanding the knowledge of Judaism and people learning more and connecting, which was wonderful and very short-lived, because then Idi Amin came into power. And when Idi Amin came into power, he started as just like any other leader, as a good leader, but he ended up being the worst leader in our history, and because he did not like Israel or Jews at some point. He did not like Christianity, but they were the majority, so he tolerated them. So he banned all the other religions, including Judaism, and people in the community stopped praying. They were arrested for building a sukkah and imprisoned, and people had to bribe their local officials with goats and land so that they are let out of prisons. They were beaten. We have a cave in the community. It's a very large stone where people used to go and hide so that they can pray, like on holidays when they needed to pray. So Idi Amin was overthrown in 1979, and when he was overthrown, it was 2 days to Pesach, to the Seder, and people celebrated in style because it was another liberation story. And until this day, when we have Passover or Pesach, people tell stories, especially older people who lived during Idi Amin. We have 2 stories of Pharaoh, and they also tell stories of living under Idi Amin. And there's a different wonderful kind of celebration during Pesach. So a little bit fast forward, the community was still, in search for other Jews or for more learning. And at this point, the community had not done formal conversion. Everybody at this point was living Jewish lives and practicing and everything. And I think it was around 1995, the community had heard that there was a Jewish community in Nairobi, which is mostly a community of people who moved to Nairobi from England or from other places. And so the community, somebody saw an advert of high holiday services, and so that's how they went. They cut out the newspaper and went with it. Two of the leaders in the community, sat on a bus and went to Nairobi so that they can, make connection and be with the Jews in Nairobi. And so when they got there, it was, nobody believed that they were Jews, and it's very hard. So there was these 2 men seated in the back of the synagogue, and there was a young man who was American, who was in the Peace Corps, and he was working in Nairobi, and he saw them, and they were wearing kippot, and he talked to them and came back to Uganda with them, and on the way, he stayed in the community for a couple of days. And when he came back to the US, he wrote an article. He was a student at Brown University. His name is Matthew Meyer. And he wrote an article and contacted an organization called Kulanu as well. Kulanu is an organization that works with merging and returning smaller Jewish communities around the world. And so he contacted them and made connections with the Abaidaya community. So the Kulanu sent a delegation of rabbis and visitors to go to the community, and they brought the first Torah in 1995 to Uganda, which was such a wonderful celebration. And at this point, the Jews in Uganda were already living Jewish lives. We had all the music and everything, and so it was such a wonderful celebration of connection and of meeting other Jews. And so the talks of converting officially to Judaism began, but they were not very considered because at this point people considered themselves Jews, and the idea of conversion was very foreign for them. So until our rabbi, who is now our rabbi, was the leader of the community and made contacts and came to the US and talked a little bit and saw that this could be something that we can do in the community. And at that point, the community was basically Orthodox, but we did not, identify as Orthodox or Reform or Conservative or anything, but it was more practicing, more traditional. And so in 2002, later on, the community agreed. It was a heated discussion, but the community agreed to do conversion to be part of mainstream Judaism. So there was a delegation. The community looked for Orthodox rabbis at the beginning, but nobody would do it. So there was a delegation of conservative and reform rabbis who came to the community to do an official conversion. So we all went. I was, I think, around 13 years old, and with my grandparents and everybody. It was such a wonderful day. There's a movie that you can watch. It's called Yearning to Belong, and it's all about the conversions and the process. And that day, it was such a remarkable day in everybody's lives. And so that was it. And so that began also the connections to the outside Jewry, to Israel, and to the U.S. And Kulano continued being part of the Jewish community in Uganda and supporting different programs, including helping to establish the Jewish schools and funding women's programs and a lot of things that were in Uganda. And so our rabbi also came to the U.S. to study. He went to Ziegler, and in 2008, he was ordained as a rabbi. And after he was ordained, the Jewish Agency came out and recognized the Jewish community as one of the Jewish communities in the world. And the Jewish Agency would recommend for what Jewish communities or who is a Jew to the Interior Ministry in cases of making Aliyah, which has been a little bit complicated also, because it's like, on one hand, the Jewish Agency does, the Interior Ministry does not, and some of the reasoning has been because the conversions were done and the rabbis did not stay in the community, and it's an emerging community, so that's a totally new case. It's different from somebody converting in an already established community. And although this community was already established, it's not what the Interior Ministries was looking for. So there's been a lot of struggles and fighting. We have one person who is in Israel right now. He lives at Kibbutz Ketorah, who's been trying to make Aliyah for over, I don't know, maybe 5 years. And I think luckily he might soon make Aliyah, but he had to do another conversion in Israel to be recognized. But the community still is seeking to be recognized in Israel as well as a former Jewish community. And it's taking a little bit of a while, but I wanted to also say that I hope that it happens, that any Jew who wants to, to make Aliyah in Israel or to be part of Israel can be recognized, and I hope that happens. But on the other hand, the Jewish community does not want to move to Israel, not everybody. We have, people, my parents and ages and above generations, people who have land and animals. It's more of a subsistence community that has depended on farming for a really long time, and most of the people do not speak English or other languages, and it's a different kind of communal living. And also, so I think that it would be very hard, and not really, I don't think people think about moving at all. We've had a few cases of young people who have gone on birthright and on Masa trips in Israel, which is also very confusing because Israel allows them to come on a birthright and a Masa, but not on Aliyah, and that is still going on. But other than the young people, we haven't had a lot of people interested in moving as a community to Israel. And one of the other things is, luckily, today in Uganda, even though it is not the best place to, the best political environment. We've had our president for over 38 years right now. He's the only president for many, many years, the only president that I know in my lifetime. And he keeps voting himself back into power. But one of the things that has been consistent is there's freedom of worship and freedom of religion for everybody. So the community does not feel threatened or in any way at risk to move or to do, and that's something that has been really grateful, and we pray that that continues as well. So I realized that I haven't been scrolling through my pictures, so if we can go through, I'd like to show you. So that is my grandfather. He passed away in May, and he was 102, and so I grew up with my grandparents, my grandmama and my grandfather, and with my two brothers. And if you've read my book, surprising, my two brothers are Avram and David. They are the ones that are in the book. And we grew up on a farm growing crops, and my grandparents grew coffee as well, and we would go sell coffee in a coffee co-op, and it was such a wonderful time. We would do Shabbat shopping. Growing up, I loved to wear the same clothes as my grandmother. We know she would make these beautiful dresses. and we would have leftover material from the dresses, and they would make a dress for me. So I love that until at some point when I did not, but I really love that. And going to synagogue for services with my friends. Most of my best friends have been around the formed by going to Hebrew school and going to Purim plays and being part of the Jewish community. My home is about 5 minutes walk away from the synagogue, so I basically grew up around the synagogue. And when I was growing up, I used to take kids out of the synagogue on Shabbat during the Torah reading, and would go teach them, do a little Torah study or teach them Hebrew songs. And some of these songs I learned from volunteers and friends who came to visit and live in the community from Israel and from the US. So this is just a picture of Semeika Kunguru, who I talked a little bit about. He was the founder of Judaism. He's the one that read and thought and was really moved by what he wanted. Which was more of like he wanted to do Pesach, and he was wondering why we don't do unleavened bread and why we don't build sukkahs and why we don't circumcise. So he was a Jew. He had a lot of questions. That's the Jewish way. And this is his home. So his home has been designated now as a historical site because he was a big influence in the Ugandan history as well. And for the Jewish community, we know him in a different way, but he was part of one of the biggest kingdom, the Buganda kingdom. He married the princess, and he was a warrior, he was a soldier, he worked with the British, he was influential. We can go to the next one. And so this is Samson Mugombe, who was one of the people, my great-grandfather's generation, who took Judaism to the next level. So Samson Mugombe composed a lot of psalms, and that he translated. They were already translated in Uganda, but he composed tunes to them, and he would teach everybody. And he taught himself how to read the Jewish calendar. He's never been to school. He taught himself how to read the Hebrew alphabet, and he would he was the leader of the community, my community, after Semeika Kungulu died. And he is the grandfather of our rabbi and most of the leaders in the community, basically, because his home, he made sure that his home was, filled with Judaism and learning and so much more. I love this picture. These kids are all in their almost 30s, but it's a picture that's Igal and Daphna and Simcha, and when the Jewish community was, growing and developing, we knew people wore kippot, but we did not know how the kippot looked like. So the Jewish community looked to its Muslim neighbors, and they had these big kofiyas. And so we have this signature kippot in Uganda, which are big, but also, personalized to be Jewish. So they always have a Magen David or a menorah on the top, and there are such wonderful signature crafts in Uganda in the Jewish community. And the Ugandan Jewish community has been very creative in terms of observance and worship, because this Pesach, I schlepped 2 suitcases of matzah and kosher wine and stuff from here. We do not have the privilege of going to the supermarket and, buying things. So people have been very creative to make challah over open fire and to have what we need to be Jewish in the community. Thank you. So that's the new synagogue. That's our synagogue right now. We used to have, we've had like several synagogues, and this is the new one. It was donated through Bechol Lashon, and it's about more than 600 people, and it's because it's a growing community and it's the headquarters. So it looks like any average synagogue around the world. When you come in, the only difference would be the way people dress and the music and stuff like it. Chickens might be walking by, but it's almost the same. And different villages look differently. This is one of the villages, a house in one of the villages in Namtumba, one of the other synagogues. And people love to be Jewish and to proudly be Jewish. So most people's homes have on there, they drawn menorahs and Magen Davids or Hebrew letters or things like that, so that they feel that their home is Jewish, and it's, they're proud of that. And so that has been through almost every home. The picture of the boy with the jerry cans, I wanted to put in there, is that most of the Jewish communities are in rural communities, and so we have a lot of challenges, including clean water and malaria and things like that, and which the community has also worked very hard to improve. We have a hospital now in the community that treats people for free if they can't pay for malaria and other things, and a lot of water improvement around the synagogue, but it's still an issue. People go for long distances to get water. That was a picture of a sukkah. But we can see this one. This is a picture of Mama Devorah, who also passed away about 3 years ago, lighting Hanukkah. This was a long time ago, lighting Hanukkah candles with her granddaughter Simcha. This is one of the sukkahs inside the sukkah, and people celebrating seated around. We always have lots of fruits. The sukkahs are made with papyrus mats and different kinds of leaves and branches and stuff like that. And so this was the ordination of our rabbi. So my community is not it's not only a Jewish community. Everybody lives in the community, and so somebody's home is Jewish, another person's home is Muslim and Christian, and we also have big extended families. So I have some of my families, and my family are not Jewish. My immediate family, my brothers and my close family is Jewish, but I have uncles and aunties who are not Jewish, and that's for some time, that's also how people have converted into Judaism, because some of the people, our relatives who stay with us and they want to learn more, they learn more about Judaism and become Jewish. That's how the community also grows. But it has been mostly through marriages within the Jewish community as well. And this is a beautiful picture I like of women. This was the first adult Benot mitzvah for women who took on, studying to do bat mitzvah. So it took some time as I talked a little bit about it, the community was originally mostly traditional, and so it took some time to get from there. So when we did the conversion, and it was a conservative conversion, and our rabbi was going to a conservative rabbinic school. So there was discussions of women leading services and being part of the community and making it an egalitarian community. And that's how we have the Orthodox community, because we had a group that broke off that wanted to keep it traditional. But I'm so proud. I'm proud that I'm standing here today because we made the choice for the community to be egalitarian. Yeah. And so these are some pictures of the schools. As I said, we have we have 5 Jewish schools at the high school, and we have a lot of youth groups and activities. The youth are part of USY. Even here, we have AYA, which is the Abaida Youth Association, and they have a conference every January. We used to have a music festival. So in my community alone, we have about 7 languages that are spoken, maybe more. And so we have different cultures. We belong to different tribes and clans, so in the Jewish community itself. So we used to have like 2 days in January where people showcase like different cultures from the north and from the south, different dances and food within the Jewish community itself. It's a very diverse and complex community. Uganda is also one of the countries, it hosts about 1 million refugees. So Uganda is like, we have a lot of people from Somalia and Rwanda and Southern Sudan and so many. So this is also a picture of a birthright to Israel, which was the first birthright. About 34 young people went to Israel, and there was a lot of dancing at the airport and drumming and so much joy. So I talked a little bit about cultures and different tribes and different things. So this is one of these pictures is a circumcision ceremony, which happens in 2 boys. It's almost like an initiation ceremony. when somebody is around 13 and above. And the other one is like a beautiful dancing, which is almost similar to the Maasai dancing. This is from the north. And so we have, we have our Jewish culture, and we also have the Ugandan cultures and traditions that we celebrate. A lot of them are really beautiful blend. When we do a wedding, we have two big ceremonies. There's an introduction ceremony where, the bride visits the home of the groom visits the home of the bride, and there's such a beautiful traditional celebration. And then after that, we do the chuppah, we do the Jewish celebration. And a lot of things are like that. The circumcision is very different because, the Jews circumcise about 8 days. And so that has been, a lot of people also belong to this tribe that does the circumcision at the age of 13. I haven't seen anybody who has chosen to do this. I think people realized they wanted to do the Brit Milad 8 days. So there's some conflicts, but most of it is really a blend of wonderful mixes of traditions and cultures, which has been really amazing. So I'm going to stop speaking and just look around to see if we have some questions that I can answer. Thank you. Yes, Fran. Yes, so I grew up around the Jewish community. I grew up going to Hebrew school. I was one of those people. I'm one of those people who proved everybody that they were like, will you be a rabbi? And I proved them right. But I wanted to be part of the Jewish community. The Jewish community really changed my life because all my education, all my friends, and I was part of the Jewish community, and I wanted to do something. I went to university to study, and I studied a bachelor's in business administration. I majored in banking and finance. I hope that I can use that knowledge at some point. But when I was working, I worked a little bit in Kampala. I worked for an Israeli organization that did agriculture training and introduction of new varieties of crops and stuff for farmers. But I didn't feel like I belonged in the business world or in this world. I felt like I should be in the Jewish community. Even if it was an Israeli organization, I couldn't take off Shabbat or do things to be part. And I was away from the community, and so I had always wanted to either study to be a rabbi or a Jewish educator, and so I started by coming to the U.S. I came to the U.S. The first time was in 2012. I came to be part of BCI, which was a group, young people, young adults from all over the world come together. It's almost like a camp, but for young adults, which was wonderful. It's a leadership camp. And the next years, I came back to speak for Kulanu. So Kulanu was fundraising money for women's programs and for the schools. So I would come and go visit different Jewish communities. And so, and that was wonderful because I got to see different kind of Judaism, how Judaism looks in different places and different things, some things that I liked, sometimes things that I could bring back home, and some things that I could not. And also, so I also came back later to work in at a summer camp in Atlanta, Georgia, Camp Coleman, which was a URJ camp. We reached out. One of our friends had gone to work at a summer camp, and he had a wonderful time, and he had great stories. So we reached out to so many different camps, and Camp Coleman fortunately responded. And so when I was there, I met with different rabbis and faculty and educators, and I told them that, one of the things is that I wanted to do this, but I did not know where to begin, where to start from. And so they sent me to JTS and to HUC, and that was it. And I'm here. I was in Israel for 2 years, 1 year studying at Pardes, which is a wonderful non-denominational but traditional Jewish studies for tech study. And then I joined HUC. But I think that one of my one of the meaningful things for me would be to sustain Jewish learning and Jewish life and being a community congregational rabbi. My daughter is 14 and she just began high school. She's in 9th grade. So I'm going to stay in the US for another 3 years so she can finish high school. But my goal is eventually to go back to the community in Uganda and be a rabbi there. So yes, not a little bit, a lot during Idi Amin, but only during Idi Amin, and also even after, because after Idi Amin, the whole Jewish community was looked down to, and a lot of people didn't go to school because they were forced to, to either be Christian, because most of the schools that were established at that point were Christian schools or Catholic schools, and a lot of people chose not to go to school, which was, it's a different era and a different time, but they were also really picked on and all these things. I went to a Catholic church and I had to go to church every, whenever they wanted us to go. But that was like mostly, it was not something that was very aggressive or something that was other than, they wanted you to be, nobody bullied, accepted the community that it could be Jewish, it could be different. But it was mostly under Idi Amin that the community faced a hard time. But that was it, and I said, it's really wonderful. I don't like our government so much, but the one thing that it's done is religious freedom. It's been great, and it's a great support of Israel, so that's a good thing to take at this point. Yes. Yeah.
You said that 7 languages are spoken in your community. What languages are they?
So we all speak, a lot of people, especially people who went to school, speak English, because English and Swahili are the national languages. So we speak those in school, but only in schools. At home, everybody speaks. We have the Bantu, which has also like so many languages under the Bantu. We have Luganda, Lugwele, Lugisu, Lunyole, Lunyankole, but those languages, they have some similarity, but you have to really understand the language to be able to speak. But because the communities, everybody's from different tribes, so we all speak those languages because we grew up together. It's the same community. There's one Jewish community in the north of Uganda that does not speak a language that anybody else knows, because it's Luo, so it's a different kind of language. And so the only way that we can communicate with each other is either through English or Swahili. But they send their kids to the Jewish school in Mbale, which is about 4 hours away to be at the boarding school. So most of the kids are in boarding school, so they've learned, and they now have all the local languages from the community. And everybody's trying to learn Hebrew, just like anywhere else. So we always have one more language to add. Yes.
What's the population, what's the number of
Abayudaya.
Jews in Uganda? Is the first part, and the second part is there significant aliyah to Israel?
That's a good question. So Abayudaya, Abba would mean father in Hebrew, but in Luganda it's people of. So Abba Yudaya is people of Judah, so like Jewish people, basically. That's the name. It's very fanatic, Abba Yudaya. And it's about, we estimate it to be 2,000 people, but that's like a 5 years ago census, so it's a little bit more now. The population of Uganda is more than 45 million right now, so it's a very, very small percentage. And most of the Jewish communities are in the eastern part of Uganda, around Mbale. There's a growing Jewish community in Kampala, in the city, because we have all the young people who go to university. They need a place to go for worship, to do activities and stuff. And also most people end up staying in the city, which is a problem and also an opportunity, because most people don't come back to the village. But that's the cities where they have opportunities to find jobs and to stay, and some people raise their families there. So there's a growing Jewish community there. In the city, there's people have a synagogue that they go to. It's usually moves from one place to another, somebody's home, but it's a growing group in Kampala as well. We also have Chabad in Kampala. Yeah. So Aliyah, oh, thank you for reminding me. So Aliyah we have one person for now. His name is Yosef, and he's been in some Haaretz news at some point. And he went in Israel to Israel on Matzah program. We had like 4 people go to Israel for Matzah, and so the rest of the people went back to Uganda. He went to Uganda, back to Uganda too, and came back to Israel and wanted to make Aliyah. And so there's been it's brought up all the issues about the community being recognized and not recognized. It ended up that he had to do another conversion for himself because it was going to take so long. The case is still in the courts, and there's still issues of recognition. But I think he's probably will have his Aliyah approved this year, because he had to study again, even though he's from a Jewish community and he's been living at the kibbutz Ketorah, which is a wonderful kibbutz in the south. So he had to study again and live there to be recognized and to make Aliyah. It was a bit disappointing, and I think it was disappointing to explain to the people back home, especially the older people who have been traveling. Everybody is so proud and knows that they're Jewish, like there's no way, and that hasn't changed. But I think it was some kind of disappointment, because the people love Israel and they look up to Israel and they know Israel is part of them, and so it was a bit disappointing that to see that and to know that. But hopefully, we have the Masorti movement in Israel has been a big part of pushing for this, and also the reform movement in Israel, mostly the Iraq, has been a big part in representing the community as well. Yes.
A couple questions. Is there any Hebrew spoken other than Hebrew study for purposes of Torah?
Not as much. Almost everybody can read Hebrew and follow the services. We have some people who have been to Israel, who have lived in Israel, who can speak a little Hebrew. There's still community still learning. We always have some Israelis who come, mostly young Israelis from the army, who are traveling around, and they come into the community and live there for like a month or so and teach Hebrew. We always have volunteers from different places, but not so much spoken, but reading and Torah and everything else.
And what do you do to keep Pesach, as far as not all the rituals that are needed, and how do you get matzah?
That's a great question. So the community makes its own matzah. Most people make. Well, but it's not enough, to last everybody for the entire 7 days. And so usually sometimes we buy from Chabad, or if somebody's traveling to Uganda and asks what they can bring for the Jewish community, for any Jewish holiday, it's always the things that people can use for that holiday. But that's mostly it. And some people just stay away from eating chametz and everything. Everybody cleans their home. Everybody, has different dishes. One of the things that has helped, I think, is we do eat things, different. Like for kosher purposes, I was talking about this with milk and meat. The community already, the tradition in Uganda is that we don't cook with milk, we don't cook with butter or anything. So people only have milk when it's tea, and nobody eats tea with meat or anything. So it's totally different, separate, and that has really helped that there's really no mixture of milk and meat, and some people have different plates. And it's also a community that's not a wealthy community, so it's hard to have so many things, like so many dishes and so many things to use. So a lot of people do try and keep as much kosher as they can. A lot of people don't eat meat on a daily basis, so there's lots of vegetables. People grow their own food and stuff like that. We usually have every Shabbat we have a goat that is slaughtered for the whole community. For the Torah study, we have food. People come and there's services. There's a Torah study and people eat lunch at the community. For every festival, there's a festive meal at the community. There's candlelighting, there's kiddush, and there's everything for the community, for everybody, so that people don't have to worry about doing that in their own homes if they can't afford or if they don't have to. It is really changing. It was mostly farming for many, many years, and it's changing because of the change of climate change and a lot of things. People can't grow their crops as they used to, and there's a lot of young people who are going to school now. We have a lot of teachers in the community. We have 2 doctors in the community. We have nurses, and my brother is a civil engineer, and we have so many different people, and so young people are also all over the country, and even in the Jewish schools, we have a lot of teachers from the Jewish community as well. So it's definitely changing, but it's still a lot of people depend on farming. Yes, I am, and hopefully not the last. Yes, I am. Yeah.
So they will accept you there? Is there like the reform?
That's a good question. So that's the only challenge. There's the community is basically, my community back home is conservative, but I don't think I don't think that when I go back to the community, there's so much change that I want to introduce a new prayer book or something. I think I love how we do services already. We have all these tunes and rhythms and everything. And I hopefully I can just bring a lot of my teaching and experiences into the community. And there's really no challenge in being a woman rabbi. Everybody everybody loves and wants somebody to study more Torah. And also the community, has had a lot of women leaders. We have almost a lot of young people who lead services are women and read Torah and all these things. So the community is egalitarian, 100%. And I think there's really no problem. Every summer, most of the summers, I go back in the community and I teach, and I'm part of the community. So I don't see that as a challenge at all. And we have, like I talked a little bit about it, we have more than 12 synagogues. Most of them have, wonderful leaders, and we don't have the rabbis. And I would love to, be part of all of the synagogues and maybe go around and do some teaching and programs and stuff like that. Yeah. Yes, in the back.
How did you come to write the book?
Oh, that's a good question. So I always, tell stories like this, and I had a Zoom session, and I told the story. Somebody asked me from the audience, and they asked me what is a childhood story that I love, a Jewish childhood story about a Jewish holiday, and I said Sukkot, because I still love Sukkot. We used to love decorating the sukkah, but we would also have this competition, which was not an unofficial competition, but we, as the kids and everybody else, we made it into a competition. We would go around and go to everybody's sukkah, and people would decorate their sukkahs knowing people are going to come by and have this big walk. So the rabbi would lead the walk, and we would go around and, say hello to everybody's sukkah and eat a little bit in everybody's sukkah, and we would sit in one sukkah at the end. So for us as kids, we thought that was the sukkah that won, but I think that was not true. It was one of the big sukkahs or somebody who had more food. I think it was pre-arranged, but I love that, everybody was carrying their, on the back, their sisters or their friends would jump and we would go around, and I just love that. So the book, when somebody asked me from the audience, I told that story, and it turned out that the person who asked me was a publisher. And so she wrote to me a few days later and said, you could put that into a children's book. And I love telling stories. I'm so proud of where I come from and my community. And, I love doing that. And I said yes. And so we worked together and found an illustrator in Israel, Moran Yogev, who's really wonderful. I think she brought the book to life with the beautiful illustrations. And we worked hand in hand. I wanted to represent, the greenery of the country and the community, the rolling hills and the beautiful clothes that people wear, and even people's physical futures. We went back and forth. I was like, no, the rabbi's nose is a bit bigger than that, and so it was just amazing. It was such an amazing experience, and I'm just so grateful at how much it was received. It's my own personal story. I had so much joy growing up. I didn't grow up with my parents. They died when I was really young. But I grew up with my grandmother and my grandfather, and they were just the best parents you could ever ask for. They were just wonderful. We had so much joy. They made sure we had everything, and we would farm, and we had our own goats. I had my own goat growing up. Everybody had their own goat, and we were responsible for our goats. And so, I wanted to represent that kind of home. And also growing up, you grow up in everybody's home. The saying that, it takes a village is really true. I grew up in everybody's home, and everybody would help each other if you don't have something, somebody else would help you. So I wanted to represent that in the book, of people coming together to help each other and to be kind to each other. So that's how the book came up. And I just finished actually my second book, which is about Shabbat. So probably, hopefully next year, it will be out. Yes, bye-bye. You did? They are the cutest. They're really great. Yeah, we used to have a big competition with the goats, because everybody had to find the greenest grass for their goats, or go, miles to, to do things for you. And I think our grandparents knew that this would make us really take care of the goats, and so it was just really wonderful. Yes. Yeah, it's definitely going to be. Yeah, it's going to be definitely different. And I've been outside of the country for about 7 years now. There's Amazon here. We don't have Amazon, but I think that feeling of being home. I could be anywhere in a Jewish community, really. I think that could be true, but I think that the community in Uganda needs me more, there will be definitely challenges, and one of them is the community is not in a place to sustain a rabbi. So that's also a very big challenge for me, because going back and being full-time as a rabbi, I can't take another job, because it will be, it's different. It will be 8 to 5 p.m. and it's not, it won't be. So I have to make sure that I have some support to be able to go back to be a rabbi in Uganda, which I'm, HUC and other people were working through that, and I'll be here for another 3 years. Hopefully that's something that we can manage. So that's one of the challenges. But on the other hand, I think I go back home every time. I know I always say that Uganda for me, home for me is my village. It's all the people, seeing everybody. And things really change. I go back and there's like a new house and there are like new neighbors and people, and then my favorite tree is not there anymore, but it's still, it's the village and it's the people that I would rather be. I don't want to be anywhere else. I want to be there with them. Yeah. And it's, there's always a lot of challenges, I think, everywhere in the world. Yes.
How is the LGBTQ?
That's a tough question, good question. So my country has been in the news lately for really outrageous laws that it's made against the LGBTQ community, and there's been some some people killed and some people, in danger. We had a friend. I have a friend who's moved to Chicago now, and we had a friend, somebody that we knew, who was beaten in Mbale. The Jewish community itself, like the rabbi came out and, was in support of the LGBT, with support of people, and it was something. He's also been a member of parliament he's also a big politician in Uganda, and he's on the opposition side, and he's come out truly in support against the law that was made. But it's also very dangerous because there's a lot of mob justice, and it's been a lot of propaganda. Because, and I think the propaganda even comes from outside of the country, from mostly Christian, evangelical, and from here. And so a lot of people are just, fed with this propaganda and stuff, and you hear somebody tell you things that you just don't know. But mostly I know some friends, but I'm not in the community specifically. I don't know anybody who is gay or lesbian in the community who is under threat. But it's been a sad situation to read in the news. It's one of those things. I love my country and I am ashamed of my country at the same time. I think we have that everywhere in the world. Yeah. Yes. Definitely, yes. And I think because when we came here, it was really hard for her to adjust because as a child, I thought she would adjust well. When we went to Israel, I threw her in an all Hebrew-speaking school, which was also hard, but at the end she was getting it, and then we moved to the US, and so she had this big gap, like she did not learn so much in Israel because it was a different language. She was trying to learn the language, and when she came here, the culture was different, or the inside jokes from all the other kids, they had watched different TVs, and so she was a bit so quiet for a really long time. It was hard for her, and now I can see that she's sprouting out, and she's, making friends, and, going to the movies with her friends, and loving it, and she loves the school. She's at Heschel right now, and she loves the school. She's on the soccer team, and I think that she's trying to establish her roots here and have ground, and I think it will be really hard for her. But the reason why I stay around for another 3 years is she finishes high school, and if, it's one of the things I don't want to leave my child behind, but I think that's, like, if she chooses to go to college here, that would be a good time as well. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too. We can talk with you. Thank you. I am so grateful for being here this morning. Thank you. Yeah.
Here for us.
Yeah.
And I also want to thank you too for taking
Thank
care
you.
of all the babies.
Wonderful.
And I guess we can go back to the lounge, and if you would sign some books, that would be wonderful.
wonderful